Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey there, sorry. Starting with an apology, but sorry that we're a little bit late again. Again, technical issues, which I have been assured are going to be addressed. Yeah, I believe it. I do. I believe it. I really do. Susan should be on the other end. Hi, Suze.
I am.
Okay, good. It's a beautiful day here in Pittsburgh, Green Bay, too.
It's a beautiful day here in Green Bay, and we'll see what it is in Chicago in a few hours.
So you're going to, after the show, head off, right?
Heading off.
Okay. I worry that the audience gets a little tired of and eye-rolling tired of when we talk about our mother. But I just want to sort of quickly do so again, if you don't mind, real fast. Because Susan sent me a video yesterday of our mom finally back in the swimming pool. Because, I mean, this has to be historic that this early the pool is open.
And that it was in the 70s yesterday, right? Swim.
Yeah. So after, the winter and her inability to do what she loves to do, which is swim, she jumped right in, and it's just remarkable to watch her go. She's very methodical. She ain't fast, wouldn't win a sprint. Just this methodical back and forth and back and forth. And, she's going to be 99 years old in the
Right, month. And every once in a while she'll stop just for a second to pick like a bud or a bug out of the water. Yeah.
Well,
and that's it. And then she's back at it. It's not like she does. I mean, if I'm in the pool, I'll do 2 or 3 lengths and I'll go, okay, time to rest. She just goes back and forth and back, and maybe every 10 or 15 or 20 lengths.
She'll pause for a sec.
She'll pause for less than 30 seconds.
Well, it's pretty amazing to look at anybody who's closing in on 100 to do that. And I just want to say it made me very happy because I know that the enforced sort of, the enforced solitude of the pandemic and then the winter, not even allowing her necessarily to walk safely. This is just wonderful. Was she exhausted though?
Well, here's the thing. I had to bark her into the pool because she just kept thinking she was too tired to go. So I said, you know what? I want you to sit outside in the sun and feel how gorgeous it is because that's going to make you want to get in the pool. So I got her out in the sun, and sure enough, she was in the sun for maybe a minute and a half. She says, well, it's hot out here. I'm going to put on my bathing suit. I said, right. So she does. She comes out. She hops right into the pool. And folks, this isn't kept at 150 degrees. This is colder than I would like to get into.
Yeah,
she keeps it at 80 degrees, which is colder than most people like their swimming pools. But she finds it enervating if it's any warmer than that to swim in. So she just got in and then says to me again, well, I don't know how much I can do. And then does 50 lengths. 50.
Well, that's pretty amazing. I mean, I don't know. It's pretty amazing. So I'm sorry. Well, we'll stop now. Although it was interesting because while we marvel at our mother's, longevity and her good health, in the science section of the New York Times today, the journalist Jane Brody, who's been writing a health column for them for 100 million years, does a reflection of the fact that she has just turned 80. And then she starts pointing out how many people are living really long and doing well. The architect, Frank Gehry, is that how it's pronounced?
Mm-hmm.
He's 92. He just began work on a huge new downtown project in Los Angeles. We got Fauci, right? Who's
right.
80.
Listen, you got Dick Van Dyke and Angela Lansbury that just were both in Mary Poppins too. She's at least mother's age, and he's 95 and still dancing. Nancy
Pelosi looking good, 81, smart as a whip, wearing high heels. Bernie Sanders, who you'll recall had a heart attack, right, when he was running, and we thought that was the end of him. He seems spry as usual. I'm just thinking of the political ones. But she writes that the people, the group of Americans who live 80 and beyond is rising steadily and projected to grow even faster than the group under 18 for at least 40 more years. So, wow.
But you gotta, that's a serious discussion because people have to very seriously think about what they want to do with what may well, if they retire early, be a whole second half of their life or even more. And you have to be prepared for that financially, and you have to be prepared for that emotionally. And if you don't like what you're doing, then, maybe you stop doing it sooner so that because you've got all this time that you could be something else. I really think humans need to redefine how they look at the rest of themselves and what they want to put in their life to make up for what they were doing before, because I know that having purpose in your life is not something that we're surprised to find out is important, but it really is important.
Yeah.
And if you have absolutely no goals or aims other than to sit on a couch, it's going to be a long 60 years, and my guess is it won't be 60 years, it'll be 30 years. But if you figure out something that is stimulating and interesting and keeps you engaged with your life, well, then you probably do get a whole second half. And so I think it does behoove us to try and figure out how we want to spend it, how to best spend it, and to be aware that we do have to spend it.
Well, these are all, I don't disagree with the word you've said. The thing is, and this is the really sobering thing in her piece, is that the average, and again, average newborn in this country today, and this says something about how unhealthy America is, the average newborn is not expected to make it to 80. Do you know that?
Yeah. Well, we have pandemics and opioid crises and
poor diet, rising obesity, right, and too many people living in poverty. And then she points out another thing. If you look at all these old people now who are doing pretty damn well, they grew up eating real food. They grew up without all this ultra processed food that we unfortunately have eaten, and all of that is part of what has created the obesity epidemic.
Surprise! Corporate America is actively killing us.
Yes, and then, but it's a great business model because we've pointed this out before, because once they've made us fat and sick, then they make tons of money putting us on diet programs.
And feeding us medications that break other parts of our bodies, for which they then have to treat us as well.
Yes.
And you're right, just cooking real food.
Real food. Like they used
eating real food.
Real food. Just real food, guys. And I think some of us reacquainted ourselves with that during this enforced, being stuck in our homes, in that we didn't eat out as much, and we started cooking for ourselves more. And generally, it means, not always, that we were eating healthier, perhaps. Ellen writes, I'm so jealous of your mom. I've been deprived of my lap swimming for way too long now. I usually swim through our high school's adult education program, but that, of course, has been closed since I last swam there in March. It looks like the outdoor pool I have access to this summer will open on schedule. I can't wait. I hope.
Well, be aware and keep checking into it. There might be reservations. They might want to still maintain social distancing. So if you're really an avid swimmer, I would be checking into it now, see what the rules are, and see if you can get your name on some reservation lists. This is the voice of experience.
Really?
Well, that's how it is in Chicago. So things are opening up, but not in ways that you might think they're opening up. And in some ways, it makes it much nicer because the places that you're going that were always so crowded are not crowded. But you do have to plan, and you do have to stick to a schedule.
Okay. Well, I do feel for people who, all those people who were addicted to the gyms they went to. But those things now are opening up. Speaking of old people who sort of reinvent themselves later in life, it wasn't too long ago, maybe about a month or so, that I shared a story that I had read about this woman, this old woman, and I said, no, I can't find her age. She was in her 90s as well, and she lived in India, and she married at 15. She spent the next 50 years of her life raising her family, and then because she took her granddaughter to check out a local shooting range and picked up a gun herself. She was 68 at the time. She became like she's called Shooter Dadi, Shooter Grandma. And everyone in India became aware of her. She won contests. And this is so amazing because she grew up in this culture where women weren't supposed to do anything like that. Anything. And, totally male-dominated culture, very conservative region in India. She spent the vast part of her life milking cows, grinding wheat, mopping floors, feeding this huge extended family. And then she picked up a gun. Now, the man...
Imagine that!
The men in her family didn't know.
Yeah, you
and
bet.
So she kept them in the dark. But she, under the guise of chaperoning her 12-year-old grandchild, kept going back. And the men in the family only found out about all of this when a local newspaper published an article about her because she'd been winning medals at otherwise, they didn't know anything about this, and they were furious.
Yes, but she had the gun.
And here's what she said. I listened to them quietly, but I decided to keep going. and I'm looking at a picture. She's an old, wrinkled woman and wearing a long skirt, head scarf. She competed well into her 80s, often against men with military backgrounds. She won medals upon medals. Also, her granddaughter became a national marks person, whatever they're called. So she even created a school for kids to learn how to shoot, became a coach and mentor to hundreds of young women. And so she became, in her old age, this feminist.
Yep.
Today, it says here that her part of Western Uttar Pradesh, I guess that's the state, has dozens of shooting clubs, hundreds of children who take the sport seriously, and for many of them, it's a ticket to a better life and a job with the Indian Army or security forces. Every one of her grandchildren have competed at the national level. Anyway, right after I shared all that with you, I saw her obituary.
Aww.
So she is now gone. She died on April 30th, and it wasn't the COVID stuff that's going on there now, but her husband never saw her compete. And he and his brothers who ran the family just ignored her celebrity and her new interests. And she is quoted as saying, and that was fine with me. Amazing. Chandra Kumar. God bless her.
Have I told you I'm taking up knife throwing?
No. Well, not axe throwing. You know, you can throw axes too.
Yeah, I know. I think I start with knives.
Oh, okay. And why are you doing?
Well, because I was working out with my boxer trainer.
Yeah, I know, but
Zoom.
It was not enough to now.
No, and I was thoroughly enjoying that. But as she was showing me she was demonstrating something she wanted me to work on. She kicked away at a big pile of things on her living room floor. She said, "Ignore that stuff. Those are my knives." And I ignored it for about 30 seconds. I said, "Whoa, wait a minute. Let's go back. Those are your what?" She said, "Those are my knives. It's for knife throwing." And I go, "Ooh, can we do that too?" She goes, "Would you really like to do that?" I said, "Ooh, I'd really like to do that." She said, "Okay, why not? These things are fun, and they're new skills that teach my body all sorts of new things. They're so good for my brain. And, by the way, it's fun." As I told her, my trainer's in her 60s, right? So I said, we're going to be the two most badass old broads around.
Yeah, I'm going to steer clear of you. Geez. God almighty. Ay. Okay, so.
Well, everybody, I think it's interesting that we older women, when we find our purpose in life, pick up guns and knives and
yeah,
I wonder why that might be.
Well, I don't know. Maybe, you live a relatively powerless existence for the majority of your life, and you want something that makes you feel powerful and in control. I guess. I don't know.
I don't know.
It's election day here in Pittsburgh. I want to remind the audience that we're electing, it's a primary, but in Pittsburgh that means we're electing the mayor today, because ain't only Democrats going to win. So whoever wins the Democratic primary wins. And just reminding you to head to the polls. I got this really, I'm stunned, and Roger, I forwarded this on to the people at City Paper for them to check out. Roger wrote, did you know that poll workers, volunteers are quitting at the last minute to protest the November rigged election? He says, a good friend of mine runs a number of the polls and is currently pulling her hair out trying to man them. is anyone in media covering this? So Roger's saying that some of the poll workers aren't showing up.
No, and they're doing it. What he's saying is they're doing it deliberately. That they signed up to be poll workers, knowing that they didn't intend to do it in order to influence an election themselves. That's really disgusting.
It's really
disgusting.
It is really despicable. Roger, I wish you would send me your friend's number so that maybe a reporter could get this out. Whatever. Just saying. Unbelievable.
Well, as any good Republican would say, let's fuck up a democracy a little bit more. We aren't done yet. There was an article in, I guess it was either the Times or the Post. I can't remember which one I was. About Wausau. Did you happen to see that? Wausau, Wisconsin?
No.
Wausau, Wisconsin has been mired in a political maelstrom, I guess, of their own making, because someone had the idea that they should publish a diversity statement saying that, that they were welcoming to all. And it turns out they aren't.
Well,
and they couldn't agree on the wording, because saying that they welcomed everybody meant that they were putting white people down. They just flat out said it. You got people in the columns flat out saying, if he does better, I'm going to do worse.
Where did
but I've never heard them be this clear about it.
Okay,
and
but that is, and at the base of that, and what I've said this before, the reason we don't have nice things in this country, which is to say universal health care and all the kinds of safety net stuff that every other civilized nation has, is because of what Susan just said, this peculiar American thing that is based in our race, our just systemic to the bone racism, that Americans were quite willing to have a safety net until about the 30s and 40s, when they began to see that black people were getting the same benefits. Because used to be, these kinds of benefits weren't for black people to get. And so when black people started to get this kind of thing, it became something that it became welfare, it became handouts and white America was willing to go without, white needy America, because of their sense that if black people got this stuff too, that they somehow, the white folks, would lose out.
Well, and it's also just become very clear that, that one of the shining principles of America, as they see it, is I'm to do as good as I possibly can, and it's even better if it's at your expense. The way I should get there is by standing on your head. That's good.
God.
I mean, when you read this article, you're just going, I can't believe this. All about trying to put in we're a friendly town diversity statement. Now the people that we're trying to put it together are thinking about moving out.
You could also, I'll make an argument from the other side, just to play devil's advocate here. This was coming from their city council or their whatever, I don't know, whatever
city council,
entity, right? You could argue that simply bringing it up, the more progressive people on the council who brought it up, that they had to know that they're more conservative. It's not right to even use the word conservative. They're more Republican folk would see that as a red flag.
One of the women,
it's provocative to them, and also, what difference would it make to have such a statement? Someone isn't going to come to Wausau because their council, and it was unnecessary. Do you know what I mean?
I can understand what you're saying. It was, of course, introduced by the one black council person, and there was a Hmong woman who are Thai refugees that are.
No, I don't think they're Thai. I think they're Cambodian.
Well, in this article, they said these were
Thai.
Okay. Unless I totally misremembered. And anyway, she was born and raised there in Wausau. I mean, they've been here a while. And she said, "This is not the place that I'm raised in," And I do not understand. They did not expect what happened to happen. They didn't expect people to stand up and the one and one of the guy is talking about the coloreds and how if the coloreds get it, and he's the big guy. And I'm just going, this is just makes me heart sick.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be controversial to say in the United States we believe we are all created equal and have equal opportunity. That should not be controversial. There should not be someone standing up and saying, if that's true, someone's taking some of mine.
But that's the mindset so many people have, and they've been egged on to feel this measure of grievance and fear. Caravans of brown people invading your country, bringing disease, cutting your throats in your sleep. This is, Donald Trump.
Oh, I know. And by the way, this farmer, this 51-year-old farmer that leads the opposition, looks like he eats way too much processed food.
Well, okay. Well, he looks like a real American.
I'm just bringing it back to the conversation that he should be eating a healthier diet. He has no excuse. He lives in America's, farmland.
Okay. I want to put out there that I mentioned yesterday that Liz Cheney had said that some of her Republican colleagues had actually told her that the reason they voted, to oust her and against, making Trump accountable in any way is because they were literally afraid of being killed.
Yeah, the same reason the LaPierre was floating on his mega yacht in the middle of some sea.
So these very people who have made this country into a nation that is armed to the teeth, right? They're the reason why we're armed to the teeth and why it's almost legitimate, right, to fear.
Well, and they also stoked the mob. I mean, they poked the bear.
Right, and now the bear's coming for them. And I was thinking of this horrific, awful human being, this Marjorie Taylor Greene, and of her screaming at another congressperson, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, screaming at her as she walks out of the House chamber. Hey, Alexandria, you don't care about the American people. Why do you support terrorists? Why do you support terrorists? This is okay, so this is what now passes for a congressperson, Marjorie Taylor Greene. And some guy on Twitter nailed it. It is something I have suggested before. I think Matt Gaetz would fall into this as well, this category, as would that Josh Hawley. These are people who have no interest in governing. They have no interest in
the actual job.
Doing the job. They ran because, I'll find this guy, here it is. He says, I think what we're seeing is just an ongoing trend of people who want to be celebrities more than they want to govern. And the Republican Party now has sent so many of these people into office, state level, and they're just there to cause trouble and to raise their profile and to get on Fox News and then maybe to work at Fox News. They're just, it's a game to them of getting to the top, not to govern,
right,
but to be famous.
Clicks. It's about
power.
Clicks.
Okay, well, and speaking of another extraordinary Republican, how about this guy? What was this jerk's name?
The tourist guy?
Yes.
I mean, we can pick him out. It's just another tourist day. And then, of course, inevitably, 3 days later, and I remember watching, that was one of the few days since the inauguration that I was actually watching news during the day, because I don't do that anymore. But I was watching that particular hearing, and I caught this guy. And within 30 seconds, I was screaming at the television. Well, what are you doing? Stop testifying. You know, I mean, this is what he was testifying. He kept saying things like this, outrageous.
I don't think he was testifying. He was questioning.
No. He was the questioner, but he was testifying.
Yes, right. He was using it as he knew he was on TV, and he was going to make a statement. And he said, quote, "It was just like January 6th. It was just like any kind of tourist day."
And then 4 days later, there's the picture of him along with 6 other terrorized Congress people barricading the doors against the tourists.
Yeah, against the tourists. But what this shows is chilling, because in real time, you are looking at these Republicans rewriting a story that we all know. We watched it.
We just watched it.
We watched it. And they're now saying, no problem. And in fact, they weren't Trump supporters. Oh, yeah, they weren't Trump supporters either. Did you know that?
No.
And
that was Antifa, if I've ever seen it.
Yeah.
And if they look like Trump supporters, that was just false flagging.
So I guess if you're doing this to support the big lie, you just have to keep lying. Just lie, and don't blink. And sitting in a congressional hearing with other people who experience that, and they have the gall or the guts to say that, but they're terrified of getting on the wrong side of the Frankenstein they created.
Yeah.
It's so dangerous. I can't, often, I'm sorry, I'm stammering today. We used to say, when you talked about Germany, you would, before World War II, you would say, how could they not
notice? How could this be?
How could people not stop this before it got out of control? I mean, it's insanity. This seems more insane than the Germans.
Oh, it does. And you see people trying to stop it, and nothing stops it.
I don't know. I just don't know.
I don't either, but I don't. This is why, in some ways, the pandemic was good, because when we'd have conversations like this, and I would think about that little scrawny 2-bit tourist guy, that you just would like someone to quite literally knock some sense into him.
Well, Susan. Yeah. Well,
I don't want to say anything to get the Secret Service to come. I'm not actually advocating violence, but if he were to trip somehow and get a good knock on his head and wake up sane, it would be very nice.
Well, it ain't going to happen. Ed has said the Hmong, H-M-O-N-G, are members of an ethnic group that have not had a country of their own for thousands of years. They lived in southwestern China, but then the Chinese began limiting their freedoms in the 1600s, and many migrated to Laos, Thailand, and other neighboring countries. So that's where they're displaced. God, they're like wandering Jews.
Well, they're displaced, and now they live there's a lot in the Fox River Valley of Wisconsin.
Also they live a lot in the Green Bay area in Wisconsin, and also in Minnesota. But
it's sort of lovely, because they continue they've brought their culture with them. So the Fox River that divides the city of Green Bay into an east side and a west side, and for the time that my sister and I were growing up here, was the stuff of quite literally my nightmares, where I would dream that the bridge broke and the car fell into the river but bounced off of it because it was so polluted from everything. I mean, I've literally had that nightmare. But now it's been cleaned, and it's a beautiful river, which I never noticed as a child. But one of the things that makes it so beautiful is now, as long as it's not frozen over, that river is dotted with fishermen.
Yes, Hmong. The Hmong fishermen. You see them out in their boats, and it
changes the whole view of that river, because previously, if you were going to see water traffic, they were speedboats. This is not that. This is just this peaceful, just beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you, Mom.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm sorry, but people that don't understand the beauty and the gift that our immigrant culture gives us from all over.
Tell me about it.
You and your avocado toast. Tell me how much you don't like Mexicans. Give them back their avocados.
It's really...
I just...
Really.
Oh,
that reminds me of something I read. I never referred to this because I just didn't have the stomach at the time, but our former Senator Rick Santorum.
Yeah. I didn't even read about it. I just read that he did something despicable again, and I said, I don't even want to know.
Okay, well, I'm going to share something with you that he said, and I hadn't said it myself, but I want to find exactly where I have it here. He said he said essentially that there were here. He said this on CNN, who for some reason employs him as a representative of Republicans. He said, there isn't much Native American culture in American culture.
Oh, right.
He was saying that before the white men came, the people whose land this was had no culture that we found interesting enough to take on.
Right.
I mean, clearly, the implication that Christian European settlers built this country from nothing. And someone, I think this was written by, this is really extraordinary because it appeared in the local paper, which is owned by a Trump-loving racist millionaire. But whoever's now writing editorials has been being sort of astonishing in a number of instances, including this one, because it says this: to set the record straight, this is offensively incorrect. Such words indicate a fundamental misunderstanding of the melting pot of cultures that forms these United States. And then they lit light into them. Do you enjoy corn, Mr. Santorum? Or perhaps peanuts, pumpkins, squash, or melons? Native Americans were responsible for genetically modifying many crops that still permeate a typical Westerner's diet. Settlers arriving in the New World would never have survived if the native tribes had not shared their farming techniques with them. And then they go on. How about rubber, kayaks, certain early forms of analgesic, or the game of lacrosse? These tribal cultures you so readily dismiss have cast shadows stretching to today with their discoveries and practices, continuing to impact American lives. And then he goes, this thing goes on. Americans just, he says, and I didn't know this, perhaps the most significant impact by Native Americans involves the U.S. Constitution. Dating to 1142, the Iroquois Confederacy is said to be the world's oldest living participatory democracy. What? I didn't know that. Dating to 1142, the Iroquois Confederacy. This confederacy of 6 Iroquois-speaking tribes in New York, Pennsylvania, Ontario, Canada, provided inspiration for the original 13 colonies of the United States to band together. And to this day, the Great Seal of the United States features an eagle holding 13 bundled arrows, a nod to Onondaga leader Casanatego, I don't know how to pronounce these names, who argued in the 18th century that many arrows together are tougher to snap than just one. And did you ever, in your learning about the Founding Fathers, hear one word that they maybe might have gotten some?
No. And here I am trying to think of that statement giving us a year in a way that they would not have been keeping track of time. And it also suggests, some tradition of relating history back in terms of those things. So I'd be interested in finding out how they get back to that year.
I don't know, but check it out. It says that the Senate in 1988, this had to be when the Democrats were in charge, passed a resolution, House Concurrent Resolution 331, acknowledging, quote, the contribution made by the Iroquois Confederacy and other Indian nations to the formation and development of the United States of America. So there's definitely history there.
Oh, no, I'm not doubting the history. No. I'm finding it interesting. I'm trying to, I want to know how much is oral and how much is written. And especially when you're going back to 11 something.
Yeah, I know. Amazing.
And so, and so what's interesting is it's clearly overlaid with the European telling of it. And at this point, whenever I have to understand that it's overlaid with that, I am instantaneously suspicious, even if it's being presented in a law story way.
Well, check it out. I mean,
it's interesting. It'll give me something to check out. Yeah.
Iroquois Confederacy. Okay, so according to this, the oldest functioning democracy. So here's something I've been sitting on. I haven't been in a Target store yet since the pandemic. It's not like I went there a lot anyway, but I haven't. And now I had no idea that Target was a place where you could, I guess, get run over. Target, have you heard this? Has temporarily suspended certain sales, citing a threat
cards
to the safety of their customers and workers. Specifically, it's Pokemon cards. Pokemon.
Well, of course.
Well, what? And it turns out it's not just Target, Walmart too. They're all during the pandemic. I guess people who had nothing to do began trading. You know, people have been trading baseball cards and Pokemon cards and all kinds of, bubblegum cards. People, if they're there, they're collected, and they've always been collected. It fell by the wayside but when you're stuck, in your house for a year, you start going through your crap and you come up with the cards, and of course, there's always a few valuable ones. So the people just would start stampeding and buying them all up so they could basically jack up the price if they found one. I mean, it's all, it makes me puke. So it says here the demand now for new packs of cards, like those that were sold in Target, but they don't want to sell them anymore, and in Walmart. And it's not like, people they're camping. They were camping out, waiting for the stores to restock with more, and then they go tearing into the Target, I guess, running over people. And I mean, Target literally had to say, okay, guys, we don't have any. We're not selling any.
Yeah, I got to tell you, people during the pandemic have been doing very weird things to stores, and thinking it's fun. I mean, just not even paying it. We're totally, we were never very civilized. We're now totally uncivilized.
Yeah. A rare Pikachu card was traded for an estimated $900,000 in December. And I guess there's these agencies, these businesses that confirm the authenticity of rare cards, and they say they have been so overwhelmed that there's this huge backlog. People are going insane.
That's right.
And
but at least
yes,
you don't have to remember a password in order to maintain its value.
Yes, okay. Well, that's something else I want to get into. But it says that part of this is, stuff you hold in your hand, right?
Part of
the
actual asset.
Part of the increased demand for these cards, listen to this, traces back to social media influencers who have found many viewers by streaming themselves opening packs of new cards on video. Imagine that. There are people now who are making money and have gotten people all over the country who breathlessly watch them, these so-called influencers, open a friggin' pack of new Pokemon cards. Have we, devolved into the stupidest, shallowest of peoples? I can't, what do you mean that's something you would do? Oh my God, so-and-so is opening cards we all gotta watch. I don't understand this world at all anymore. Hey, one more thing, just to scare the hell out of you. This former reporter for Breitbart, the right-wing, Steve Bannon owned it, right?
Right.
He says, guys, what you're seeing with, like, the congressman saying, "Oh, no, it's just that was just a normal tourist day, January 6th." He says, "Guys, you need to know what you are seeing now is just Act 1 of a 3-part play, if you want to call it that." The first one was, yes, the big lie. January 6th, the rewriting of that history, and that's what busily Republicans in state legislatures, Republicans in Congress, on Fox News, that's all they're doing now, is pouring lies into people's heads and rewriting history. He says, get ready, because Act 2 is going to be the 2022 midterms.
Of course.
And here's the scary. He says if Republicans somehow get control of just one of the chambers, and there's a pretty good shot they got at the House, he says, I will guarantee you that in 2024, if they don't like the results of the election, the national election, the presidential election, they will not certify those results. And they will create a constitutional crisis, the likes of which we have never seen, putting, obviously, our democracy totally at risk. So that's Act 2. What the hell is Act 3?
I think that is Act 3. Well, Act 3
that was Act 3?
Yeah.
Okay, so then you'll see, what you're going to see, he said, is when you have one of the two political parties make excuses, rewrite history for the violent insurrection effort on January 6th, you're going to see more of that. When the Republican Party sits up at a congressional hearing and says, oh, it was just like any kind of tourist day, you're telling these people to keep doing it, to do it more, to get more violent, because the Republican Party will run cover for you. He said the Republicans in Congress are the getaway drivers for these Democratic arsonists. So it's not going to stop, right? It's just going
Oh, no. Why would it stop?
I just find it so frightening. I find it so extraordinarily frightening.
It's very frightening. It's very frightening. In the 50s, the mobs weren't able to be whipped up the way these same people can be whipped up now because of social media.
They didn't have social media then.
Right.
We are heading into something really terrifying. David writes about your Wausau story. This is the result of our founding fathers creating a society based on the idea of a meritocracy, but built by slaves. The meritocracy becomes aspirational, and the demise of slavery brings a perversion of competition that undermines the concept of true meritocracy. Yeah, you can't, this sleight of hand that the founding fathers did with, the only way they could get the compromise necessary was to keep slavery and say that those slaves were not human. They were 3/5 of a human. And the Civil War really accomplished next to nothing. Did it?
Well, we're still fighting it. That's what's clear.
It was a battle. We shouldn't have called it. It's the war continues.
Right.
And it's the same people, same sides, same crap. going on. I've been reading, about how Americans have been brainwashed, and people living in the South especially have been brainwashed about our history, and even what that war was about. It's something. Oh, well, I'm sorry. I'm just so overwhelmed by it right now.
Well, I don't know why you limit it to the South, because there's plenty of folks in Wisconsin clearly that were educated here that seem to have the exact same view of the Civil War as the people down South. You choose what you believe. You choose,
Hey, here's something that's not, about all this stuff. It's just something I saw that I think is interesting. Boise. Where's that, Idaho?
Mm-hmm.
Boise. Of all American cities, I guess over a certain, anything that you really call a city, Boise has had the sharpest rent increases over the last year. Boise, ladies and gentlemen. Turns out that a lot of people running out of the cities, big cities, who have money, have bought up places in Boise, which ain't too cool for the folks who already live there, right? Sharpest rent increases over the past year.
It's going to change the politics, too.
Oh, boy. So listen to this. Many of the country's least affordable places to live are not the ones you think are. So that Orlando, relative, just using what an average person in these cities earns, and then to look at what things cost for them to live. Relative to median pay, Orlando is now more expensive to live in than San Francisco. To find housing. Orlando. And Miami is more costly than New York City. Again, not in, not in dollars. They're not more expensive in absolute terms. But the people who have lived there are seeing increases because of the influx of people with lots of money to burn. And those rich people are going to be pricing people out of their homes in cities that never had this issue before. The rich cause a lot of trouble.
Well, listen, they're emptying out of New York and Chicago, and when life begins to return to normal, they'll decide they don't like Boise so much, and they'll go back.
Yes, screw them. So this article, which was in Bloomberg, says, so where is housing still truly affordable? Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think places like Pittsburgh and St. Louis
They say Pittsburgh, Columbus, Indianapolis, they have managed to stay inexpensive, and that means they become magnets for skilled, younger workers. But the reality is, as I was talking about yesterday, we're losing population here. And the rich and the developers are gentrifying the hell out of neighborhoods here and displacing black people again. I don't like the world the way it works.
No.
I really want to object.
Well, this is why you do have things like government and zoning regulations and historic preservation and housing equity distribution. But
it only works, Susan, if those governmental entities have not been co-opted and corrupted by the moneyed interests.
Well, that's right.
Period.
Or if that's your goal. Or if, as a government, that's your goal. If you're in the city of Wausau, that's not your goal.
Oh, God. Well, and we won't get into the fact that the Supreme Court has taken on
Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, where they can pretty much eviscerate Roe v. Wade.
It is a wee bit disheartening. But on a positive note, if you want to take a rapid COVID test, you can get as many as you want in a place like Green Bay, Wisconsin, because nobody knows what they're for. But if you're in Chicago, you can't get one of those things. If I wanted to start a business, I would just buy up all the COVID tests and bring them to Chicago and sell them for 15 times their price. I'd be a very rich woman.
A COVID test shouldn't cost a penny.
Oh, no, these are rapid COVID tests that you do in your home. That you don't have to pay to get a COVID test. These are things that you get in your home, and you get the result in 15 minutes. If you live in a city where you're working or you want to go to an event, they might require that you do these COVID tests, but they aren't available in Chicago because people understand what they're for and they use them.
I see.
So that's what I'm saying. They're because it wouldn't occur to anybody.
Well, I never had a test. I never have. Why should I?
Well, I tested your mother yesterday.
Yeah, and does she have COVID?
No. She goes, well, of course not.
Well, right. I'm with her. God. All right, I'm calling this one off. I can't. And guys, I've been assured by the folks at City Paper that they are going to get new equipment and figure out a better system so that the show is not...
Seeing that any 13-year-old seems to be able to do this from the
That's what I keep saying. How can every dunderhead in their underwear is doing a podcast from their basement? Oh, dang it.
All right. Okay. We'll be in touch.
Yes. Well, safe travels.
Okay.
And you don't have any idea how long you're staying in Chicago with our mom, do you?
I am staying in Chicago for the next foreseeable bit. Again, our brother is swooping through on Thursday and
picking her up
and returning her.
Oh, that's great. That's good. I'm glad you guys figured that out because if she can swim now, she needs to be home.
That's why we stayed an extra day.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
And why we're hustling in now. Okay.
All right. Well, safe travels, and I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. We'll be in touch. Okay.
Okay. Bye-bye. And goodbye, you guys. I'm sorry about today. I feel like it was such a bummer of a show. I'm not sure why. It's the friggin' world. That's why. And then there's my voice, which particularly sounds disgusting. So, listen, in the next few days before we get new equipment and all that stuff, if the show's not there right at 10, give us a 5 to 10 minute window. Although, I could also suggest to my producers that maybe they could start getting ready for the show earlier to, make sure they can get on and not have to, keep you guys waiting. I don't know. I give up. I don't understand a goddamn thing anymore. Okay, goodbye. I'm going to go out and enjoy this glorious weather. I hope you can too. Bye.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.